Hi, and welcome to another edition of Dessert Devotion. I love to share with you two of my favorite things, an easy dessert recipe and an inspiring word. Today, we are going to prepare a homemade pear butter. I have an awesome church member, Aquilyn, who gave me fresh pears from her backyard, and I thought to myself, now what can I do with it? I can't wait to share with you this recipe.
While this recipe is easy, there is no way around the tedious task of peeling lots of fruit. So I have a 2-quart crock pot that I'm going to fill. And just for perspective, your regular family crock pot is usually 4 to 6 quarts. So this is a smaller crock pot. And I'm going to put about 10 to 12 pears. Now again, these are fresh pears from the backyard. Your store-bought pears, you can probably fit maybe 8 to 10 pears. So I'm just going to peel them, chop them up the best way I can, and put them in the crock pot. Now I've filled my crock pot with pears. It's about 3/4 to the top. And now I'm going to add 3 simple ingredients. The first, of course, is sugar, a cup of granulated sugar. And then for a little balance, I'm going to add a tablespoon of lemon juice. And then finally, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm going to put the lid on this crock pot and I'm going to cook it on low for about 8 hours.
Well, that recipe was easy, wasn't it? Although the waiting, well, that's another story. But hey, it's in your slow cooker, so you don't have anything to do, right? You just launch it and let it go. I can't wait to show you how it turns out. Meanwhile, our devotional, we're going to enjoy it outside today. You know, I really do enjoy the outdoors, running, hiking, cycling. But one thing I don't really care for is camping. I'm not a big fan of camping out. Although I did have one incredible camping experience a few years ago that I will never forget. One of my college buddies, Elizabeth, convinced me to go with her on a camping trip in Peru. Now, she's a quintessential hiker. She's been all over the national parks. She's traveled all over the world on these amazing hiking adventures. But I had never been on a major trip like that before, so it took some convincing. But boy, was I glad that we went. Now, you guys may be familiar with the Mayan ruins, Machu Picchu, and they're seen as like a religious center, and millions of people have gone there to visit these famous ruins. Well, there's a sister civilization there in Peru called Choquequirao. It's more newly uncovered. In fact, we saw French archaeologists there that were still uncovering parts of it. It's actually twice as big as Machu Picchu and is not as crowded. So while we did visit Machu Picchu, we got to hike in a 4-day trip through the mountains to Choquequirao. It was an incredible adventure. Even for someone like me who wasn't so sure about spending the night outside and being out in the open. Going to Choquequirao, which is more of a political and economic center, they think, where people actually lived and worked day to day. It was neat to see and imagine how the ancient Mayans lived. But I have to tell you, more so than that impressive destination, what I remember and cherished the most was the journey. The incredible views, the things we saw along the way, all the memories that Elizabeth and I had and shared together. It wasn't about just being at Choquequirao. It was about those nights and those days together as we journeyed out to Choquequirao and back. Sometimes our experience in life, our experiences are more about the journey, not necessarily the destination. For our devotion today, we're looking in Numbers in the 9th chapter, verses 18 through 23. The Israelites have been liberated from Egypt. They're led out of Egypt by Moses, and they are there camped out at Mount Sinai. And well, they, like me, have been compelled to camp out for a while. And they are going to learn the same lesson. Sometimes it's more about the journey than the destination. If we remember anything at all about the Israelites in the wilderness, we all know about those famous 40 years, right? They depart from Sinai and they're headed to the promised land. Because of their fear to go into the promised land, they are then destined to wander in the wilderness for over 40 years. But here in Numbers, as they begin to depart from Sinai, God is going to be a pillar of fire and is going to be a cloud by day to guide them. But it reads, the Lord commanded the Israelites to set out, and at his command they encamped. As long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle, they remained in camp. When the cloud remained over the tabernacle a long time, the Israelites obeyed the Lord's order and did not set out. Sometimes the cloud was over the tabernacle only a few days, and at the Lord's command they would encamp. And then at his command, they would set out. Sometimes the cloud stayed only from evening till morning, and when it lifted in the morning, they set out, whether by day or by night. Whenever the cloud lifted, they set out. Whether the cloud stayed over the tabernacle for 2 days or a month or a year, the Israelites would remain in camp and not set out. But when it lifted, they would set out. At the Lord's command, they encamped, and at the Lord's command, they set out. They obeyed the Lord's order in accordance with his command through Moses. So when they set out from that layover, if you will, in Sinai, which is where they kind of camped out and received the covenant, right, there at Mount Sinai after they left Egypt, but before that long time before they would go into the promised land of Canaan. I know as they embarked from Sinai, they wondered, how long will this take? How long is this journey going to be? And then, as they were turned away from Canaan and led back into the wilderness, and they began to travel throughout those years, can you imagine what it was like? You may be somewhere for a couple of days, a couple of months, maybe a year. They didn't know. They just had to be obedient to the Lord. But as we read through Numbers, we know that they developed so much in their relationship with God through that wandering. Before they ever arrived at their destination in the promised land, receiving the covenant, learning what it meant to obey God, learning what it meant to care for one another and to be in community as the people of God, all of these things were not learned in Canaan. Instead, all of these things were learned during the journey. And so what we see for the people of Israel is that it was less about the destination, but a large part of the journey of the Israelites is just that experience, who they became, their identity is all about the journey. For us, we have many things in our life that don't have a neat end date or a neat destination. I think about things like milestones in parenting, or even if you're gardening, my goodness, virtual school, it does not have a real end date. We have to think about those things more in terms of when the timing is right, when it comes to its fruition, when it's in its kairos moment, when it comes to that full moment and it is ready. When your children are ready, they move to the next stage. There's no date or time or year. When you're gardening, it's when they develop, when it's this right season. There are some things that we just can't put that end date on. So when we have those things in our life that we are waiting on, and we realize that there is no end date, it's freeing for us, but it also gives the wait and the journey more meaning. Instead of asking God, how long, how long, how long, maybe we can take this opportunity to say, where I am right now, I recognize I am not where I want to be yet. I am not yet at my destination. But Lord, show me what experiences I'm supposed to have right now. Show me what I'm supposed to learn. Show me who I'm supposed to meet, who I am supposed to encounter, who I'm supposed to help. Show me what I am to learn and where I am to grow. Make this journey of waiting a time of growing, a time to be mentored, a time to mentor, a time to have new experiences. Allow it to be a time where God can show you and show me what it means to be obedient, what it means to be in relationship with God. So I invite you in these times where we have sometimes some reservation and we have some trepidation about when things are going to end or what the end date is going to be, to have the courage to step back from our timelines, to step back from those time frames and just camp out. Can I convince you, like my friend Elizabeth, to just camp out for a little while and enjoy the journey, and to be able to see this time in our life is not one where we are rushing towards a destination, but one in which we are encountering God every day on a meaningful journey. Besides, as we see in Numbers with the Israelites, when it's time to move, God will move and we will see that it's time to pack up, set out, and move forward. Amen.
This crock pot has my house smelling wonderful. I just let it cook throughout the day. Now I'm going to take off a good bit of the liquid. I'm going to leave just enough for there to be a little bit at the bottom. So I took out about a cup or so of the liquid. And as you can see, I leave just a little bit of the liquid in the bottom of the crock pot so that I can blend it. Next, I'm going to take my immersion blender, being careful because this is still warm, and I'm just going to blend it until it comes together. This took maybe a minute or two. It'll depend on how many pears you have in your crock pot. When you finish, it's going to be a nice consistency that is thick and smooth. The only question is, how am I going to enjoy this? You can enjoy your pear preserves with biscuits or toast. I am going to enjoy my preserves with a sweet and savory dessert. I'm going to bake brie. You can find brie in the specialty cheese section of your grocery store, and I'm going to start with slicing off that top skin of the brie. Baked it in the oven on 350 for 15 minutes. Now it's all melted and gooey, and I'm going to add my freshly made pear preserves on top to give it a little bit of that sweetness. And then for some extra crunch, I'm going to top that with some chopped walnuts. This is a great dessert when you don't want something too sweet, but it's still a nice finish or appetizer.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's kind of sweet, savory dessert. I think it was worth the wait. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Dessert Devotion. We'll see you next time.